listens to the players about what we think we need to work on. And we saw this as a big positive, seeing that there are coaches out there who are making a positive impact on student athletes. And then another takeaway, we saw that investing in the player-coach relationship is a very important factor. So for many athletes, we saw that performance is linked to their personal connection with the coach, which sort of suggests that there's a very strong bond between coaching and between coaches and their athletes. So it's a very effective tool for coaches. Yeah.
Just to kind of the next 2 pages are just kind of a big run over of what we really want to highlight, and that's athletes highly value a supportive emotional climate where they feel believed in and encouraged, which in turn boosts their confidence and motivation. And then, again, this is all backed by our survey results. And then the most common positive strategy involves coaches giving direct, specific guidance on techniques, mistakes, and areas for improvement, particularly when delivered one-on-one.
So I think one of the main things that we wanted to avoid with this project was feeling like we were attacking coaches. We are all so grateful for the coaches we've had. They give a lot of time and a lot of effort into providing us with the opportunity to play sports, to get better, to do what we love to do. And so one of the most positive strategies that we all took away, even before the survey came back and then after the survey came back, we saw a correlation in the responses, which kind of verified that for us, was coaches giving direct, specific guidance on techniques and mistakes and areas for improvement. And that was more one-on-one. Instead of addressing the whole team, maybe a vague team building block or something like that, students and athletes learn better when they are addressed one-on-one. They can respond, have a conversation instead of a single direction dialogue. And that was a big thing that we saw, and we hope to kind of use that idea to educate coaches further on how they can be better, because as we learned, better relationships between coaches and athletes makes better performance. And so if you go to the next one, we have some statistics here, and this is where we saw a little bit of opportunities for improvement, things that we could not predict, but we kind of figured were going to be where we could improve. So 68.5% of coaches, their athletes believe their only priority goal was winning. And 65% of students said their coaches do not make an effort to know them on a personal level, which is something that we found to be a big area for improvement. There's a lot to be learned and a lot to be gained through personal connection. And I know personally for me, the coaches where I have played the best, I've had the strongest personal connection with, like going to practice even a couple minutes early and just talking with the coach. Like that's something that builds that connection, which can correlate onto the fields. 33% of coaches rarely or never check in with their athletes during the year. And this is another area where it just keeps coming back, that students and athletes are better when they have connection. They have sort of information and dialogue with their coaches back and forth instead of the relationship being one-dimensional. And only 8.6% of coaches always ask for suggestions from their players. And this is an issue. The players are the ones on the field. They know they have just as good of an idea of what's best for the team as the coaches do. And only 8.6% of coaches asking, there's a lot to be learned and missed out on there. So coaches asking for suggestions is an area that we hope to educate them on, both in the fact that it'll make the athletes more happy with them and more happy with their team and their team better. Some more statistics. This is what our athletes want. They want the chance to regularly share their thoughts. 82.5% are looking for that. And if you were asked to annually give input, how would you like to be asked? 77.7% said anonymous survey, and that's the format of our survey that we gave. It was anonymous. When we kind of talked to them word of mouth or looked at the free response questions, they wanted to see, they wanted to be able to express themselves freely without feeling like they were going to be targeted or judged after the fact. So athletes were afraid that they were going to be judged or maybe treated differently if they brought up a critique or a criticism or an idea after. So anonymous survey was the way that they could get their word out without having to worry about that.
Mm-hmm. And then sort of jumping back into some of the free response answers that we got, when we asked how can communication with coaches be improved, because clearly the survey showed us that athletes really do want increased communication. A lot of the responses were similar to this one, which was by coaches checking in with players on a personal level more often and connecting as humans, not just through sports. And to us, that kind of just spoke to the need for coaches to be able to see the whole athlete rather than just, and be able to develop the whole athlete rather than just know and develop the player that they see on the field. And then jumping into some areas of improvement, just like broader areas of improvement that the survey showed us need to be taken into account, was this culture of fear and intimidation that coaches can create, especially when they're over relying on yelling or they have an aggressive demeanor, and that ultimately discourages effort and risk taking. And then also another area for improvement is the showing of favoritism and inequity. And so we kind of just thought that those two things are very destructive to team morale and individual player confidence. So taking into account what we found in that survey and like these are some of the things that could be improved, I think is just a great example of how this can be applied.
All right, so for future potential considerations, since we have only implemented this survey at Redwood so far, which is the high school we go to, we plan to expand it into other districts and eventually statewide and hopefully eventually nationwide. And, so this step here builds on the survey by making sure the feedback, our idea is to implement the youth anonymous survey for coaches, similar to how students get to evaluate their teachers in school. So often, once a year, students are given a survey for their teachers, and we want to do that for coaches. Just a similar way to implement the survey. And also, the step builds on making sure the feedback isn't just collected, but also making sure it's used so coaches can take the anonymous feedback and reflect on it, and then might make the practices and team culture better, just overall better environment for the athletes and coaches.
Again, more broad scale, and we're going to get into it, obviously, I'm sure, with the question and answer coming up, but top priority is to encourage coaches to incorporate youth feedback into their programs for continuous improvement. And then our next steps, which are actually continuously happening right now, is circling back with our school. As all of our senior year started, we reached out to the principal and athletic director, and we are currently working on creating a survey for the school that can be administered to the fall athletes to evaluate their coaches. But one of the large problems we saw, or kind of a barrier we had to leap over, was that our school actually had a survey developed for coaches that apparently, by parent demand, weren't actually excelling at what they thought the coaches should be doing. So they had a survey, but the problem with the survey was it only highlighted the negatives of a coach and couldn't show the school if the coach was doing what they should be doing and if there are positive coaches having a great impact on students. So what we're working on right now, and the fall sports season is actually just about to end, is developing the survey and working on our survey and improvising it into how can we tell a coach is a good coach, and also kind of identify patterns within coaches that are excelling at what they're doing, so we can kind of create a curriculum for that. So that's what we're working on right now. And then besides that, expanding our survey into other school districts and other schools. So yeah. And then it's now time for a question and answer. So if there's any questions or anything, love to hear it, love to answer them. So yeah, thank you.
I'm a therapist contracting at school sites, and I work with a lot of athletes, and many of them are speaking about what you're sharing.
Yeah.
I hear that, yes, you're wanting this connection to be heard by coaches, but is there a way that we, as staff members at school, can support that relationship? And I don't know if it's been asked in the survey or anything like that, but sometimes we have the ability to contact the coaches and be like, hey, we're seeing this.
Yeah.
But I just want to get some maybe suggestions or how to better support, because I'm hearing it, but I don't want to put a confidentiality for us yet. And I just want to hear more from the athletes of how we can support you as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's really important to have staff influence in that, because I don't know if you guys agree with me, sometimes coaches feel like they're separate from the faculty at a school, which can be healthy in some ways because it gives them a chance to be a coach and have autonomy in that setting. But at the same time, I think it is really important that staff is there, because I mean, they can influence in a million great ways. And having that communication is something that I don't think it exists at Redwood. I don't know if it exists better at other schools, but I think it's super important. And a way that can happen, I think, is like if this survey was to be implemented, I think like it's not just for coaches to look at, but I think just in general, like in the community, like staff and parents and everyone can see like what the at least for our data, what the youth wants and what's working. A lot of what's working, but then some things that can be improved. And then, like, in general, staff and community can help coaches get there and keep those environments as healthy as possible.
I think also one of our questions actually was how can we help like implement staff and a trainer or a mental coach or a therapist into the programs, and how can we like kind of help with that mental side of the game and have almost like a communicator in that way. And what we kind of came to in the survey was we like our athletic director or a principal or someone of a adult status higher power in the school to communicate our results with the coaches. So I think that would be kind of one of the ways to implement like the staff and like the student at like the student's life into like their athletics in a way. So yeah.
So was this data shared with the coaches?
So that's what we're working on right now. Yeah, so the survey we're implementing is going to have like kind of as it's being developed right now is like the statistics we found from athletes, and then the next survey we're doing is like surveying the athletes so we can give the data to the coaches. Sorry, I'm like explaining it weird, but our athletic director and principal are going to be giving like having meetings with the coaches based on the survey results. So yeah.
I have a question that's sort of in tandem to that. But first I want to say like kudos to y'all for doing this. You shouldn't have to do this. Like you should not be doing this. You should be athletes, but it's unfortunate. But more power to you. Seriously. But I want to know if you consider. I don't know if maybe this could be separate, but would you consider using these same questions on the coaches, sort of like flipping it? Because I'd love to see if like there is a discrepancy between them thinking, do they think their priorities with coaching are, that's where I want to sort of get at. Because I'm like, if you ask them the same questions, it's like, okay, if they're thinking they're doing one thing and you're receiving another, where is that coming from them?
Yeah, so I mean, like what we discussed with our principal athletic director as well is like how can we give our coaches a voice in a way too? Because sometimes athletes are upset based on playing time or other outside values, right? And they're not receiving the coach because it's not the athlete's fault, but not as cohesive to the athlete. So one of the ways we're going to do it is have a meeting with one of the captains of the team with the coaches and the principal and athletic director, so we can kind of give the coaches a voice as well to share back what they think can be improved among the athletes of their team. So yeah.
I can just add a second to that, just because I was involved. When they wanted to do this, they actually did go through an evaluation. Like, should we create a survey for the whole state? Should we create a survey just for our county? Should it be our whole school district? Should it just be our school? They went through a whole analysis and decided they wanted to survey the athletes of their school, agnostic as to the sports program, and agnostic as to the sport and the program. Meaning, they gathered information on how it's working for you, both at their school-based programs and their club-based programs. So it wasn't just their school-based programs. It was like, how is it working for you in your athletic experience, in school, in this school, or in your club-based program, but only for the students at their school, because what they decided was it's a very local context, right? But as this was evolving, the principal was a phenomenal ally, and by the way, I didn't even know that they're working with you and the athletic director now to do all this, so that's what these kids have started, which is what we know about Youth Voice, right? But at the same time, a lot of the coaches were like very anxious about these kids doing this. That's where that like "you are brave" came in for them, and were concerned that they would be like targeted. And so they said, well, wait a second, you should be surveying us, like. And so I'm thrilled to hear that there's this sort of like intergenerational evolution happening now of their survey and like gathering information from the coaches as well. And like the school is now, the administration is now just taking this on, which is fantastic. And then to your question in the back about, one of the questions that they asked was, do you have access to like a mental fitness coach or something? And one of the things that I've been thinking about is at the college level, we have that. We also have nutritionists, but at the high school level, we don't. And so it would be very interesting to look at the CYBHI Behavioral Health Initiative and its expansion and the behavioral health coaches. And like, I've imagined one of them in a dugout at the baseball game with these kids. And as a bridge to their parents, like it would be so great for the coaches to have that sort of support baked into the athletic programming where that person could be working on their mental fitness, but also helping parents understand like how it's going for them in their sport and stuff. So anyway, in the back there and then here. Someone had a question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just again, power to you all. I think it's really great that when you collect data, it really amplifies your message to the right people, right? Makes you really credible. Something I'm seeing at the state level is that youth groups across state, different regions, are beginning to kind of do this research, right? They're collecting data from their peers to then elevate something that they care about to decision makers, right? So my question is, how did you kind of gain trust with your peers to participate in this research? Because it's shown to work, right? But yeah, I'm always curious, like, how do you recruit the numbers to give you that information?
During our survey, like when we were trying to, so it was really hard. We were worried. So our goal was 200 and we just barely surpassed that, but we were really worried that we were not going to get enough respondents. We weren't going to get people to come to our first like presentation and event. So we just kind of went to work with word of mouth almost. We were just talking and trying to get the word out to everybody about what it was and talking to athletes, well, because those are the ones taking the survey, and kind of explaining to them like this is going to benefit you. Like this is not just a survey we need your numbers. Like we need your information to come back and help you and maybe help your little brother or whoever it is, and talking like that. And then on the side we had we had some incentives. We had some pizza and some gift cards that helped us get people there. But I think the big part for us that we used to get people to kind of trust us and bring their real, true, honest answers was kind of pushing the idea that their information is going to come back to benefit them. Kind of full circle moment there.
And I think also, like, to add on to Jack, well, it's nice, I don't know who said it, Jake. We come across a lot of sports, and we were all juniors last year, so it was nice to, like, we kind of could communicate down that way. But I think what was really cool about the data we got is, like, people did have something to say. Like, there was the occasional one where the response is kind of weak and it's like whatever, but like I think in general we did find that people using the survey really did have an opinion and one that was strong. So like I think that's really fulfilling for us because it shows that like this work is important enough because like we can help collect that data and then do something with it.
Yeah, and a couple of us are in the journalism program at our school, and what we do is self-administered surveys. So we give people our phones, and they fill out the survey so we know we're surveying the right people, and we use social media to push out our survey as well. But we never put the survey on our social media because then people could fill it out. Anyone could fill it out.
Yeah.
So after we had an event to kind of broadcast and launch our survey, which was about 100 people. And once we had those 100 people fill it out, we self-administered, spread word of mouth, and basically got the last 102 and over the span of like 2 months before the school year ended. So yeah.
And it took minutes. It was like 3 to 5 minutes. I mean, it literally was so fast. But they did some free response answers, which is where you get this theming information that you have here. Like they themed their free response answers and came up with this. So they're holding some golden data and information from their local context, like suggestions that kids want that they can now take to their administration and have a conversation about it. It was pretty cool. But I will tell you that after they presented and did their launch group day focused event, which the principal was awesome because this was youth created and youth administered, and he was supportive of that. I'll never forget it because they finished and then they like showed the QR code to take the survey, and everyone that was there took the survey in real time in the auditorium. And one kid raised his hand and he said, "How are you going to get anyone to even care about this? Like how are you going to get the school to do something? Like, we're going to take this survey, I just took it, right? But like, how are you going to get the school to actually pay attention to like what we said?" So it was like it just already on their mind was that we might do this and no one's really going to use it to do anything. It's not going to come back to effectuate any real change. Yeah. So I was bullied by a coach whenever I was in high school, and it was a real struggle. It was the first time I sought out mental health services. And so it's great to hear that, you know, y'all are having agency and creating like cultures with your coaches. I'd love to hear from somebody we haven't heard from, if they're open to speaking, about have you seen any changes? Like as you go into your senior year with your coaches, are you feeling hopeful that maybe you had a coach where you had some concerns about your relationship with them, and then you're going in and feeling like there's an openness to the behaviors that you might see that are different based on, you know, what you have done?
Yeah, so I play water polo at Redwood, and when I was on freshman year, I got pulled up to varsity, so I didn't play with him with that coach the whole year, but played with him towards the end, and I just remember him kind of being a bit more aggressive towards the players and kind of just like yelling at a lot of players. And now my senior year, I see him, he's calmed down a lot, but he's still like using the same coaching strategies. He's just like trying to talk to the players better and using his voice to be like constructive criticism and not just like yell at them like you're doing this bad. So that coach has definitely gotten better, and actually we have talked to him about that a couple like once or twice, and yeah, he's definitely gotten better at coaching.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I can also go with that. So our soccer coach, I mean, he's a tough guy. He's very like goal oriented, and I mean, he's not easy on us. He's a great coach, but he'll be hard on us sometimes. And I know there was one time towards the end of last season. We haven't had soccer season that start for another week. Actually, it will start next week. But he had a talk with us later in the season, and he just wanted to ask us like what was working and what wasn't working with his coaching strategies. He thought maybe sometimes he was being a little bit too hard, so he had us speak up and give our opinions, and he took that feedback. And we'll see this year. I think. I mean, he'll still do the same coaching strategies, and he's going to be hard on us. That's his type of coaching style. But yeah, I know we'll see what happens. But yeah, throughout that later in the season, he was much better. I think he was much not easier on us, but he wasn't like yelling as much, and he was more patient with us. Yeah.
Well, and I think the word about your survey got out last spring. They were juniors doing this last year, and the word got out that they were doing it. And I started to see coaches be like, "Oh, I should be asking you." Like it was like just because these kids were doing this, they're like, "Well, I should be asking them."
So I kind of have like a little bit of everything out there here. What I'm hearing everyone saying here is this is systems work that you're doing, which I think is fabulous, because it's not just about, it's almost like you're sparking this, and I agree with the gentleman in the back that talked about what, how are you incorporating the coaches? I always say we don't know what we don't know, and so coaches may have felt this is how they were coached, this is the best way. So I wonder a little bit about professional learning in that, because you kind of talked about some people maybe getting defensive of all those, which is very dicey, because I'm hearing it's systems change. So I guess that's just a comment and a kind of acknowledgement that this is not it. This is huge. This is systems change. This is transformational. This is hard work, and it's not kind of as seniors, you may not see it at the end of this year. So that is kind of my question. Is like, so you guys are all seniors. Do you have other athletes that participate that are kind of onboarding so that this will continue? No. And then my second twofold is that, as far as the school side, is this the first type of advisory council that's been uplifted in any type, outside of like ASB?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think just to speak, well, Jake can touch on this in a second. I think it's something we're really gonna look towards later this year, is like who's gonna lead this next. I think we're really fortunate, like, because we're on so many teams, we know a lot of youth leaders who are juniors and even sophomores. Like, I can think off the top of my head, Nina and I know some like players who would be great for this. So I think we're gonna work on integrating them as soon as possible, so they kind of understand not only the vision, but like how are they gonna mobilize it to a bigger scale. And then also you talked about, did you say faculty-led youth programs? Or
professional learning in general, like coaches and teachers,
Yeah.
Sometimes they focus on the teachers and getting them professional learning, even interacting. So as far as coaches,
Yeah.
I think sometimes you mentioned, sometimes the coaches are not staff members.
Yeah.
They're just there in the afternoon. So how's that conversation as far as what professional learning they need or has been identified?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's sort of like, that education's kind of omitted and doesn't really exist in the way that it should. But something that we just started this year at Redwood through the principal was the Captain's Council, which I mean, most of us are actually on it if someone else wants to talk about it. But it was the principal's idea to get all of the captains of all of the sports at a round table with the athletic director, like the same people who are helping us with the survey, and sort of talk about like what is working in our sports, like how are we fostering teamwork, how are we making sure like we're not getting hazed, how are we making sure that we're showing up for other sports, so like signing up for everyone to go to the water polo game, like that kind of thing. So like we're trying to foster a better culture within sports that way. So it's been really, if someone else wants to explain, it's been great.
That's promoted by the school. Like we meet Wednesdays at lunch. It's almost a club with the administration team. So that's also incredible. And I was also gonna, like, what was the first question? What was the first question again? I had like a thought.
I was all over the place.
No.
Next leader.
Next leader. So yes, okay. We have like when I speak word about this, like people always ask like, how can I get involved? How can I help with the cause? And like we have younger siblings who are athletes, all of us, and people who we all know who are incredible leaders and athletes. So, and people are, like when we bring it up, people love to talk about it and would love to get involved. So I'm sure whoever we leave it with her and Natalia and Susan are in great hands. So yeah. Oh, sorry. You first, and then you start to take a question for you. Yeah.
I don't have a question. I actually just have a statement. My son is a freshman in high school, and I was nervous about freshman high school baseball. And for us, our program is a year-long program, which is funded primarily by parents. It's a 6-period class for them. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they go into the classroom and they have a licensed professional that comes in for mindfulness techniques, and that's parent funded for the whole school year. So I'm interested in this because of the opportunity for CYBHI in order to fund that position, because baseball, like many of you know, is like a high percentage of failure. And that's what I'm worried about for my son, because he's a pitcher as well. So, but I just think that this is really awesome because it'll give them kind of a pulse of what's happening for the student athletes so they know what they need to touch on. So I think it's really awesome what you're doing.
Thank you.
You guys are running the questions now.
In the front? Or in the back? Oh yeah, back front.
All right, so ditto. I'm wondering if individually or collectively you've taken any equity stances. I'm thinking about barriers to folks because of cost to get into certain sports. As a cyclist, that was a very high ticket cost. And I saw a lot of people my age who didn't have the access when I was younger to that. I'm also thinking it's very high profile in the news about barriers for trans athletes in sports. I'm wondering if you have taken any individual or collective stances on that, or if that's something that's potentially on the horizon.
Yeah, I would say that that's something that we have touched on before. Right now, because we're just sort of at our school still, we haven't gotten to that point, but we've talked a lot about how implementing this in other places would mean altering it based on demographics. Like what you said, there's all sorts of things that do change, and so thinking about how we're altering that survey to make sure that it matches sort of where we're going to next is something that we're definitely paying attention to.
And one of the things that did come through in our survey was access. Like not everyone has access to the sports programming.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think they're really like proving what we know, which is they start something and then there's this evolution that happens about new issues and new questions and taking an equity stance and access to sports, but whole child sports, right, if you want to call it that. Yeah, very real issue.
Start with this one, and this is something everyone can answer. I would to hear as many voices as possible on this. It's opinion based, but how has your relationship to your sport changed with this advocacy now that y'all are doing?
So kind of at the start, I kind of was losing interest towards like the summers because I've been playing baseball all year round, like every fall, every winter, every summer, and then through the spring when the season is. And kind of through this, it's kind of like helped me kind of like distance myself from like that hatred to baseball and like the not loving, just from like watching some of my friends quit over freshman year and sophomore year, and like kind of getting close to a bunch of like coaches and stuff. Like now I'm really, really good friends with my head coach. I gotta go fishing with him all the time. And I feel like it's kind of helped just from this like group, just kind of helping me get out there and get more like positive with my coaches.
I think I've changed as a player and as a teammate from it, not even through my relationship with a coach, but we saw like if the leaders on the when I was young, like a younger player, a freshman or a sophomore on the team, I learned a lot from the older players, from the seniors and the juniors. Those leaders on the team, I learned a lot from them. And now being in that position of a leader, I've kind of understood that it'll make my team better if I act as the coach that I want to be. So if I'm, instead of getting mad at a younger player for making a mistake or not knowing something, if I step into that role of teaching them or being a more communicative teammate back and forth, then I can become a better teammate and make my team better. So I would say that this initiative has changed me as a teammate, and that has changed my relationship with baseball.
I was just going to say something kind of similar going off of that. I feel like it's sort of strengthened my relationship with my coaches. It's made me realize that they really do want our input. Like Lucy and I play on the field hockey team in the fall, and the other day after practice, they asked some of the seniors to stay behind and give them our input for how they were coaching this season, and they're going to make some changes next season. And we ended up staying there for like 30 minutes just talking to them really honestly about what changes we thought should be made, and they were really open to it. And so I just think that doing this work has really given me the platform and like sort of the strength to be able to know that this is something important that they like need.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, Nina and I also play lacrosse in the spring, and I feel like the biggest takeaway I have from this is sometimes there's such a lapse in communication. Like, my coach, like, I'm such a head case in lacrosse because, like, you care about it so much. But, like, my coach is trying to help in a certain way, and I won't internalize it as that, but, like, I think just comprehending the fact that like there is kind of a communication barrier there that we can work through, but like she's trying to help in a way and I'm like, that's not helping at all. So it's like understanding can come on both sides. I guess the coach can understand, but I think like the youth and athletes can understand that, like, you know, coach's perspective, like most of these coaches like are not bad people or bad coaches. They're just not you know, delivering in the way that's maybe most effective, and at the same time athletes maybe aren't accepting everything the way that it's most effective either.
I think that also I do like youth coaching and like giving the younger athletes like the coaching and role modeling that like allows them to love the sport instead of like pressuring them to be like the best player they can.
We're out of time, but thank you for being here. Thank you to all of you for
Thank
being
you,
here.
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.